Dr. Jackie's here, changing life loving you. Yeah, that's the groove, life loving you. Feel the truth, move, life loving you. It's all we do, come on through, it's just for you.
I think that there's so many similarities to the way that I raised my kids and the way that I was raised. You know, I think mostly in the area of rules and regulations and also values. The morals and the values that I have employed in raising my own children are definitely the same. We have a value for education. We have a value for honesty and being upright. There's a value for accepting all people, regardless of how different they might be. I remember growing up and I would wake up sometimes and see foreign people in my house. Now think about it, in the 80s, we didn't know anything about foreign people in Miami. But I would wake up and someone was from Sweden and they would be talking with the accent, you know, and my mom would let them stay in our house, you know. So that was interesting. The thing that's different though is I think my parents parented according to her generation. You know how parents would talk to you like, you know, kids are to be seen and not heard. Well, that's the way that I was raised. I definitely did not raise my children in that manner. I wanted to be not their friend, but I wanted to be someone that was very close to them, that they could feel comfortable sharing things with. And I learned really early on that if I would temper the way that I would respond, and if I would use these teachable moments to always find ways to engage with my children, to get the temperature of where their minds were, and also to have opportunity to share my perspective on things, that two-way street that I was creating would keep us, you know, through them going through adolescence, growing into young men. They would still feel comfortable talking. That wasn't so in my family. When I was raised, I didn't have the opportunity to share my perspective really on much of anything. You know, you were told what to do and you did it, and that was pretty much it. And if you talk back or ask too many questions, you know, you might hear, girl, I'll slap the taste out of your mouth, you know, or I'll slap you into Monday, and it was already Saturday, you know what I'm saying? But those sorts of things I definitely did not want, and I did not employ them raising my kids. I allowed them to ask questions, but I taught them how you could ask a question. And even to this day, if you ask me a question and you have the wrong tone or whatever, or you question me, it's just not a good thing. But there's a way, like, you know, Mom, you know, why do you have this rule? Is this the way that you were raised? Now that's okay, but to say, that's a stupid rule. Why do we have to do that? That's just not okay. So I would say that that's the difference. Same morals and values, but my approach to parenting and to having the involvement. And I think that play between me and my children, my husband and I and our children, was definitely different. Well, one thing that occurred to me when I was very young is that my mom, she was a yeller. But it wasn't just the yelling. It was the fact that she used, you know, demeaning terms when she spoke to you. So she might, you know, call you out of your name or, you know, even curse or whatever. I never liked that. First of all, I was the type of child that I always understood what it was that I was doing, what choices I was making. So if you told me don't go outside, you know, when you get home from school, and I decided to go outside, I already had in my mind, okay, if I get caught, then I'm going to take my punishment. And I would never lie about it or whatever. I just take my punishment. So I would always make those decisions. I just I didn't feel like you had to talk to me in that way. And I think also I was very sensitive. So that wasn't good. And I definitely said to myself, I'm not going to do that with my children. And I never did. I have one child that I don't know how he learned it, but he has a gift when it comes to dealing with kids, particularly young kids. Now, if I had to talk about how I was as a parent, I think I would say that I was the best as a mom of a teenager, you know, or a mom at a pre-adolescent child, because I enjoyed the talking and the connecting. And while I enjoyed them as little babies, and I love, you know, cuddling them or coddling them rather, and taking care of them, I think I prized most the phase of their life when I was actually able to relate more to them and they could talk back to me and I could understand who they were as little individuals. I love that. You know, when I think about it, I think that there definitely are some differences between my parenting style and my husband's parenting style. We had to kind of iron that out when we first got married. For sure, I think most of those differences, though, are gender differences. There's a way that a man talks to a child and disciplines a child. My husband already has a deep voice, but women, we tend to go up a couple octaves. Johnny, I need you to pick up your shoes. How many times have I told? And we go on like that with the whining voice. Whereas a man says, I need you to take out that garbage. They say it one time, their tone goes, they go down an octave. I need you to take that garbage out. And so that, for one, is definitely, one of the differences. But I would say most of all, I think we're pretty congruent, except for those gender differences, like our voice and our tone when we're giving a directive, if you can call it a directive, when we're telling our child something to do. And I'd also say that we're different in terms of the discipline. So my husband is kind of like my father. You did something wrong, my father would say, now, Jackie, I understand that you had a problem at school today. Is that right? Yes. We had to talk about this, didn't we? Yes, we did. And what did I tell you? And he would make me parrot back what he said. And I would never stay dry-eyed for more than a few moments, because once I started to repeat it, by the time I got to the end, I would be like, and you said don't talk during class time. And I'm like broken up now. And then he'd say, well, you know what I'm going to have to do? No, what, Daddy? I'm going to have to give you a spanking. Okay, now, kneel down there. And he would be so succinct. Kneel this way, put your hands back, and then he would, with flick with the belt. So I'm not that kind of a discipliner. I think that I'm not going to necessarily talk to you so succinctly about what I'm disciplining you about. I'm just going to say you broke the rules and you know what's happening, and I'm levying the punishment. I think my husband's like my father was. He talks and he explains and then he levies the punishment. Now, I will say this. I think that what I learned early on is that no two children are the same. And so while there are household rules for all of the children, you almost have to make certain exceptions, or you have to alter the way that you deliver those rules or those regulations per child, because they're so different. Like I might have to have a different approach in correction with one child. It doesn't mean that the rules change, but just the way I deliver it might be different for one child as opposed to the other. Some of them you need to kind of raise your voice and yell at them because they don't hear it the first time. Maybe some of you guys have children like that, but that's just what I found as being a parent. So there was a time, I'm not going to say that there was one time, there were multiple times over the arc of our marriage where we disagreed on parenting. And I would say that there's two different instances. One of the things that used to happen was that my husband, so he lost his father when he was just turning 18. And he really confessed that, it was really important to him that he has a close relationship with the boys. And I noticed that we would decide this is going to be the punishment if they make this sort of infraction. This is going to be the sort of punishment if they make that infraction. And what I would notice would happen sometimes, instead of us coming and standing united together, I would be like the bad cop and he would always be the good cop. And that really does have strong ramifications, because your kids kind of look to the good cop as like, yay, daddy's the good guy. And then mama, who's trying to play the bad cop, who's sticking to the protocol, it's just not pleasant. And so that was something that we had to iron out. But in talking it through, we discovered that it was really because of the turmoil that he went through in losing his father. And he really wanted to kind of live that out with his relationship and our sons. He wanted to be able to know them into their adulthood. And he confessed that he was really trying to be more likable, but it wasn't fun for me, because then I'd look like the bad guy all the time. So that was one of the areas. We worked that out. The other one that was a little bit more persnickety, that I felt like we had problems with for not just like, one or two times, but I saw it peppered through the years of our marriage for maybe a span of about, I'd say 3 to 4 years. I always saw that there was some sort of an issue. And it was that my husband just really didn't agree on how they should be parented once they turned 12, 13 years old. In his mind, they should know everything. He shouldn't have to tell them. But in my mind, it's like, come on, dude, we still have to make sure that they hit the mark. And if they make an infraction, we can't just talk. We have to also take some sort of action. And we just didn't see eye to eye on that, just over the span of several years. And the good thing about it was by the time it showed up, the kids were aging out and moving out just as we were starting to get it together in that area. But it seemed to be a continual area of discord, I would say, for sure. You know, I used to ask my mom, who's your favorite child? Because to me, her firstborn was definitely her favorite. And she'll say, no, Jay, that's not true. I don't have any favorites. You all are equal. Yeah, it sounds good in theory, but I really didn't seem to think that I could point to exactly what seemed equal. To me, she was always nicer to my eldest brother. She gave him more leeway to do things than she did me. But my husband and I both came to the marriage feeling the same. We didn't want any funny business when it came to how we dealt with each of our children. We wanted it to be equal, equality across the board. Because my husband would talk often about how his parents showed favoritism to his eldest brother. So we both kind of had the same scenario. So we made it a point to make sure that everything that we did for one, we did for the other, and to not show favoritism. So I'm really glad that we did that. I think that none of my children would ever say, oh, I'm mom's favorite. Now, you know, I do on occasion tell each of them that they're my favorite, though. It goes far giving me those mom credits. There are some cultural differences. Listen, my husband is from Dominican Republic, raised up in New York. You know, I'm from what I consider to be the South, from Miami. I'm, you know, a traditional black girl. But there are very few cultural differences in terms of parenting. There are differences in terms of how we greet one another. You know, they have this blessing that they give to their elders when they see them. And other than that, that's about it. Other than the food and the music, everything's pretty copacetic. It's pretty much the same. Religion was something that I incorporated in raising our kids. My husband and I both agree that it was really central, it was very important for us. I think it went back to our morals and values, right? It was a part of what we felt was really important and what would help to shape our children. So they went to, you know, like a Christian school when they were young, learned to read and write there, and then they matriculated through public school. But that was really important for us to teach them about faith. I think that people of color, Latinos, African Americans, people from the Caribbean, we're very, very tied to our faith. Our faith is everything. And so what was important for me, though, was to not just teach them about faith, but to teach them about a relationship with their Creator. And that's what I think my husband and I did. It was important for me not to just teach it, but to emulate it. You know, I wanted to live it so that they could see it being carried out, because that was something different with me. My mom used to wrap us up and send us to church with a neighbor. You know, so I didn't grow up in the church whatsoever. I always used to identify as 100% grade A heathen. You know, I was as unchurched as they came. You know, my mom would send us to church here and there, maybe on Easter. I don't know. Besides Easter, I think that was pretty much it. And that didn't happen even every year. But we learned to reverence God and to respect Him. So we never told certain jokes, and we always showed reverence towards God. And so I wanted to take that further so that it would incorporate not just hearing about faith, but living it. Hey, Dr. Jacquie here. I'm your how-to lady. How to do life, how to do love, and how to do you, boo. So click, like, and subscribe. Stay tuned for more to come.